And so, on some stats, Nasty C reached a peak of about 1.4 global monthly listeners on Spotify, making him the #1 urban hip-hop artist in South Africa, having accumulated over 6 million streams in the past 28 days on one platform, with an average streams per listener of 4.39, making him one of the very few artists to ever tie Afrikaans group The Antwoord, whose streams have been out of reach for almost every South African rapper ever since streaming platforms launched in the country, which also created a very big and noteworthy gap between Nasty C and almost any South African rapper you can think of. To break it down, only Nasty C and The Antwoord have over 1 million monthly listeners at this moment. And other than those two, there are only 7 artists with over 400,000 monthly listeners, being Saudi, Blackie, Costa Teach, aka QUO, Big Zulu, and Dat Is Stunner, which technically means that other than those listed artists, the gap between Nasty C and any South African rapper is more than 1 million monthly listeners. So, numerically, Nasty C is 1 million monthly listeners above 99.9% of the entire South African rap industry. To put that into perspective, only Saudi, aka and Blackie have ever reached 1 million monthly listeners, with Java peaking slightly below that. So, it is extremely difficult for a South African rapper to reach such numbers, which then means that Nasty C is most likely to remain South Africa's #1 rapper for the foreseeable future. And he's basically only competing with Amapiano artists in as far as numbers are concerned, sitting just a few 100,000 listeners below Kabza the Small, solidifying him as an international artist. Taking a deeper look at the numbers, over the past 28 days, Nasty C almost doubled his listeners in the Philippines after he released a song with Jacta Budlo for Coke Studio, gaining over 50,000 monthly listeners, which was almost half of the monthly listeners he had in that country, with Quezon City having the most listeners at almost 20,000, followed by Manila, which is where Jacta Budlo was born, then Cebu, and so forth. He has also increased his listeners in Nigeria, wherein he leads the entire South African rap game, as he's the only South African rapper who frequents Nigerian charts, with Lagos having over 85,000 monthly listeners, followed by the capital of Nigeria, being Abuja, at 35,000. Generally speaking, South African rappers never stood a chance internationally, but the stats at hand suggest even if Nasty C does not make it internationally, he has enough numbers continentally to compete on an international level, as despite his impressive numbers in the US and Europe, Africa is still by far his biggest fan base. And his attention to Asia is also starting to bear some fruits, from his collabs with artists from that side, Zuluman in Japan, and now the Philippines, as his listeners in that region alone are now near 100,000 monthly listeners.
We got like 7 tracks in 8 days. Yeah, I met JP for the first time actually. There, yeah. We have been speaking on WhatsApp, but it was my first time meeting him and we knocked it out. It's an African-Asian collide. Is you with it or not?
But you guys let us know what you think about this. Comment down below. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up.